Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodigheid wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele elezwe letu nabantu balo umasele ukulunga kipondo letu. Nkosi sikelele I Afrika Klina abantwana bayo, kokela in kokele zayo, yinike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated.
Boom by my foot.
Wait.
Order.
That place, by me,
Honourable members, may I please ask that those that are on the virtual platform, please mute yourselves. Right, good afternoon, honourable members on the virtual platform. If I can just begin with some logistics. As it's been our practice to date, we've been participating, as we say, both here in the chambers and on the virtual Teams network. Please, once again, honourable members, please make sure that your network is working and in good working order for us to be able to hear you. If you are going to want to do a point of order or speak, please use the hand function. For the purposes of the sitting, we know we have translation services. I'm sure you are very familiar with those translation services on the second device. And honourable members are reminded that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings. And in this regard, I draw attention of the honourable members to Rule 40 of our standing rules. Thank you very much. Order, we will now deal with questions as printed on the order paper. I now recognize, Honourable Moran, do you have a point of order?
Speaker, I'm rising on a point of order.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker, first good greetings to all members present. Speaker, I'm rising on a point of order based on Rule 144 of a matter of urgent public importance. As per Rule 144 subsection 2, a letter was submitted to the Speaker's office this morning at 8 a.m. from the Leader of Opposition requesting an urgent debate on a matter of urgent public importance on the implications of the state of dysfunction within the Western Cape Legislature. As a result, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, of the internal democratic alliance divisions currently being witnessed and the impact these divisions and dysfunctionality within the Western Cape Legislature having on the service delivery of the province. Now, in terms of 144, Rule 144 subsection 4, we wish to know the Speaker's ruling on this matter because according to these rules, it's only the Speaker, it's the Speaker's prerogative and only he's to rule on such matter. Thanks. We really want to know what his response was in terms of that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honourable Moran. So I was given the copy of the letter sent by Honourable Cameron Dugmore to the Speaker. The Speaker then did respond to Honourable Dugmore and stated very clearly that he had not allowed or let's say rejected the proposal that this was a matter for public importance in terms of Rule 144. So I trust that you would have received that letter. I then will close the matter as the Speaker is the Executive Officer of the WCPP. His decision is final. I don't have any power to override that letter that he has sent to the ANC. I trust that's in order. Honourable Syed.
Deputy Speaker, then on a point of order, I think just given that you've now relayed the decision of the Speaker, also I'd just like to know maybe, why is the Speaker not here? We believe that he's not supposed to be going around when there's this cloud over him. That's on another point. I think it's really disappointing that he can go and represent the legislature in another part of the world. Member Smith is not representing the legislature anyway. Deputy Speaker, just then in terms of Rule 21, subsection 1, is it possible then maybe for us to have the House suspended so that we may meet to discuss this matter, because we are not pleased as the African National Congress that the Speaker has declined the debate at this moment in time. It's most certainly unfair. Our debates that we call of public importance are always rejected by the Speaker. I think perhaps for the flow of the last day of the session, when we're going to have a sitting, perhaps you can give us some time to adjourn so that we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, before I proceed, Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I've listened to, and obviously I'm not privy to these letters that have been going around, but it's almost a debate that's going on here, talking about dysfunctionality in this organisation. Now, that would need a different motion coming to this House. I think that if the ANC wanted to call for a matter for urgent discussion, one would think that they would call it on perhaps the national shutdown threats, or the murder rate in our country going up by 22%, or perhaps the energy crisis, perhaps youth unemployment being the highest in the world. What about, millions hidden in furniture?
What point is the Premier speaking on?
Thank you, Premier.
This is not a debate, Speaker.
Yeah.
I think.
But what point is the Premier speaking on, Deputy Speaker?
Honourable members, I'm not going to belabor the point. There has been a decision taken by the Speaker, firstly, in writing to the Leader of the Opposition. Secondly, it is not for me at all at this point to override that decision as the executive authority. Thirdly, in terms of the rules and the decision is clear. We are no longer have to take any further points of order. We're now moving over to questions. I now recognise the Honourable Minister Mania.
Thank you.
Order, unfortunately.
Point of order.
Honourable Doug Moore, is it on the same
Thank
point?
you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, just to inform you that I'm not aware of any power that you have to simply say that we cannot have points of order. You're not even aware of
The same point, Honourable Doug Moore.
It's a different component of the issue, because I want to, point of order, quote, Rule 144, subsection 5, which actually says very clearly that it's the Speaker's responsibility to consult with the programming authority and only to consult on the time allocated. So it's clear on this point of order. Number one, the Speaker has never called the programming authority, simply dismissed it. He is supposed to, when he receives a matter of urgent public importance, convene the programming. He has not reported to the program committee. That's a breach of the rules. The prerogative actually belongs to the Speaker, and the rules differentiate between the presiding officer and the Speaker to decide whether the request for a debate of this nature is granted or not. We will therefore move that this House be suspended, and for the programming committee, which actually did not meet, to meet, so that in terms of the rules, specifically 144 section 5, the program committee can consider this. The Speaker is not allowed to make that decision without reference to the programming committee. So I'm formally asking that we suspend this House and that the program committee meets.
Honourable members, I'm very clear again on my ruling. Only, and the question really is, only if the Speaker decides on it. And secondly, the Speaker is out of office. Thirdly, the programming meeting sat on Tuesday. The Chief Whip can come in here, and this was not brought to programming. You, as a Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Doug Moore, know very clearly that programming sits every week on a Tuesday. If you wanted to bring a matter of national importance or of provincial importance to the House, you should have brought it to the Programming Authority. Honourable members, I'd like to start the sitting. I recognise the Chief Whip.
Speaker.
Thank you very
Point of
much,
order,
Deputy
Speaker.
Speaker.
Unfortunately, I recognise the Chief Whip first, and then I'll recognise you, ma'am.
It's a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
It's also her point of order.
Okay, don't be sorry. Be careful. Deputy Speaker, This had to be brought to the programming authority. It has not been brought to the programming authority. The programming authority is not going to sit now with this request. Therefore, I urge you, Deputy Speaker, I am of the opinion that the sitting as programmed for this afternoon continues.
Yeah, thank you very much, honourable members. Before I carry on,
hand is up, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Lacker, 1 minute. 1 minute, Honourable Lacker. First of all, I think what's very, very important, Honourable Dutton, was that Rule 144.4 is very clear and it states, if the Speaker grants the request, and I think that is the important part. So that cancels out the fact that the Speaker may not. It's the Speaker's prerogative to grant the request. And in terms of Rule 66.3D, C and D, I have ruled now that there cannot override the points of order and the decision that I have taken in this House as I have taken this very instance. I trust that all points of order will no longer be raised. Honourable Sayed, is this still on the same point? Because I can't entertain further points
Well,
of order.
Deputy Speaker, it's not on exactly the
Thank
same
you.
point, but it's linked to it. Just as a point of correction, the matters of a snap debate, it's very clear, it does not need to necessarily go to the programming committee. Does not. You can even call on the day of the sitting for such. So I just wanted to make that very clear.
Thank you, Honourable Sayed. But this is now in opposite to what your Leader of your Opposition is stating. So I'm not going to get involved on a difference of opinion within the ANC. Honourable members, you may only raise a point of order now. Honourable Lacker, if your point of order is also on the same point, I will not entertain it. So I'm trusting that you are producing either a separate point of order, otherwise I'm going to have to. Is it a separate point of order?
It's
but
a
I know
separate point
first,
of order.
Honourable Lacker, is it a separate point of order?
It is, Deputy Speaker.
Okay, you may speak.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, a new or a debate for urgent purposes or any other debate is submitted to the Speaker. And both yourself and Honorable Bota said it is submitted to the programming committee. And I want to differ with the both of you, and based on that, the decision that you have made is based on what you believe and not what the procedure is supposed to be. Now, based on a point of procedure, yourself, you said, no, Deputy Speaker, can I raise an order on you because you made an order based on an improper information?
Point of order. Thank you very much, Honourable Lacker. Honourable members, I recognise Minister Wenger.
So what is your ruling based on that before you take another point of order? Because you are taking a point of order on another point of order.
I told you my ruling is final. Unless you are raising something
so you are
different,
dictating.
I'm not.
You are dictating, Deputy Speaker.
Members,
you're making a decision that is wrong and further dictating what must happen because
members, I'm well within the rules to deliver my
when you're faltering, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Lacker, you're now out of order.
If you're incompetent, you need to excuse yourself.
Honourable Lacker.
No, you need to excuse yourself. You're not impartial in the
point of order. Honourable Lacker is out of order, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Lacker. You are not the speaker. You are not the speaker. The deputy speaker must make a decision. You can't tell.
Lacker, I'm naming you twice.
Deputy Speaker.
You don't name me twice.
Lacker, you've been named twice. The next time I will suspend you from the House.
Speaker.
You will please wait. Right. Honourable members, I know
don't intimidate. Don't intimidate people.
Honourable members,
Deputy Speaker.
Deputy Speaker,
No,
you're not following the
I'm busy speaking.
Members now from
Honourable Lacker,
participating in the debate.
can we please consult Hansard and we will deliver a ruling on Honourable Lacker's behaviour online.
No, not on the behaviour.
And I'll revert back to the next sitting. We will continue. Honourable Lacker, if we continue, we will be removed from the sitting.
No, Honourable, that is intimidation. That's intimidating members of parliament, members of the provincial parliament from participating in
Honourable
a
members,
debate.
honourable members, I've recognised Minister Wenger.
Thank
So
you, Honourable. Thank
I
you.
am going to make a ruling on Honourable Lacker's behaviour. I think it's totally out of the decorum of this House.
Intimidation.
Can you do that in
You've raised
consultation
points
with
of
the
order,
rules?
but you can, Honourable Lacker. Right, honourable members, I would like the Sergeant please to remove Honourable Lacker from the sitting today. Thank you very much. That ruling stands. If anybody else would like to remove themselves, they can let me know. But that ruling now
But
stands.
you must
Please
not
remove Honourable
threaten
Lacker
and
from the
intimidate members in the House, Deputy Speaker.
That's
That's not how
intimidation.
you utilize
Not
your
in
position as a Speaker of the House.
sitting.
We can't be
Honourable
intimidated
members,
and thrown out
Honourable
of the
Said.
House because of difference of
Honourable Said.
opinion.
Point of order.
Honourable
Isn't this a
Said.
democratic House?
Honourable Wenger, will you just please wait? Honourable Nkondlo, please, would you like to be named too? Please have some decorum. We are
You
dealing
are
with.
welcome to do it because you are not
Honourable
practicing
Said,
democracy.
Can I ask that you control your team, please? And your honourable members, they are supposed to act with decorum. If we
We
can
have
have a
raised hands and you are
conversation
not,
without people
we have raised
shouting,
hands.
I can't address you until you control your members, Honourable Said. You need to stand? Yes.
I may address you on this. The House has unfortunately descended into an element of chaos. But Honourable Deputy Speaker, please protect
Order,
me. They are
please,
heckling.
Honourable members.
They are not allowed to heckle and speak directly to me.
Order,
They
members.
must speak through you.
But I would like the ANT
Yeah.
also not to be heckling
can the
online.
Premier do his hand gestures outside,
All right,
please?
Honourable Said, I'm listening to
Yeah.
you.
You see, Deputy Speaker, the decorum of the House and order of the House is determined very much by the manner in which the House is chaired. We cannot have a situation where the Honourable Wenger puts up her hand after the Honourable Windvogel, and then she's recognized before the Honourable Windvogel. So I think, in fairness, we should allow Honourable Windvogel after the Honourable Lekker. I just think if we want matters to happen, yes, we do have a responsibility as leaders in this House to ensure that there's order and that there's decorum. But at the same time, there needs to be fairness and not a closing down of democratic discussion inside of the House. That's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Said. The point that I did make, and it was not reflected on Honourable Windvogel, is basically that the rules and on the rulings that we make stand. We can't have a point on order on a point of order, but I will recognize Honourable Windvogel in the very instance that she had her hand up. However, I will also recognize Honourable Minister Wenger after Honourable Windvogel. But Honourable Windvogel, can I caution you? I have made a ruling and my ruling stands. All right. So I'm quite happy to hear you, but it has to be on a different point.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think you need to become the Speaker of the House and not the Speaker of the DA. But Speaker, I rise on a question of privilege, Rule 52D. My question is, given the cloud hanging over your head, do you think it's appropriate for you to be presiding over this session?
Honourable Windvogel,
Point of
it is
order.
not a point of order. All right. Honourable Wenger, Minister Wenger, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise on Rule 62. I'm most concerned about some of the comments made by honourable members of the opposition this afternoon. Rule 62 is very clear that no member may reflect on the honour or competence of the holder of an office whose removal from office is dependent on a decision of the House, except on a substantive motion. And I think that that rule is very well may have been transgressed today, and I'd ask that if you could please consult the Hansard.
Thank you very much. I am staying now, honourable members. I'm going to, you know what I think I'm going to do, because it's clear not everybody got an answer to this letter. I'm going to read the response from the Speaker. I'm going to read the response from the Speaker, who exercised his executive authority to answer Honourable Dugmore within, I'd say within an hour, within half an hour, he answered the email. I acknowledge receipt of your request for a debate in terms of Rule 144 of the Standing Rules received by my office this morning, meaning today. When deciding whether I, as a Speaker, should override the parliamentary programme to allow for a debate on a matter of urgent public importance in terms of Rule 144, I take well-established guidelines known to members into account. Importantly, the subject matter must, inter alia, deal with the matter for which the provincial government can be held responsible. Furthermore, the urgency should be of such a nature that the matter could not be dealt by some other means in the future. Clearly, the provincial government cannot be held responsible for the perceived internal democratic alliance divisions causing a state of dysfunction, in inverted commas, in the legislature. Furthermore, on the 26th of May 2022, the Honourable Windvogel gave notice of a motion as follows, and I quote, that the House debates the impact of DA infighting and factionalism on service delivery in the province. Close quotes. I am not aware of a request being made to the Programming Authority to have the motion from Member Windvogel dealing with this matter, and which is the same in substance as your request debated in the House. But that as it may, the matter is on the order paper and a request could still be made to the Programming Authority to have it debated. Given the above, your request for a debate on this topic does not fall within the purview of Rule 144, and I am not prepared to override the parliamentary programme to allow for a debate that would be contrary to what the rules provide for. The Speaker, the Honourable Masi Mkisela. I trust that that will give clarity to everybody in this House, and I think that the motivation is sound and is not biased in any way. Honourable members, I have to move on. I am no longer entertaining anything further. You can't do a point of order on a point of order, Honourable Dugmore. You'll have to just wait, Honourable Dugmore. I recognise Honourable
Thank you very much, Honourable
Philander.
Deputy Speaker. Thank you for the response provided. Deputy Speaker, in terms of Rule 1444, as you have indicated, if the Speaker grants the request, it's very clear, Deputy Speaker, the presiding officer must announce in the House and the debate on the matter then stands over until the time appointed by the presiding officer. The submission, the request were not granted, Deputy Speaker. May I please ask that we proceed with the business of the day? Thank you very much.
Honourable Dugmore, this is the final point, and as I say, if this is not a new point of order, we are unfortunately moving on. It's not going to change the ruling. The ruling stands. For the record, the ruling stands.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Honourable Windvogel raised a point of privilege, which you have not responded to, number one. Secondly, I would like to ask you, as a leader of opposition, we want to consult with the other opposition leaders, and we request that this House be adjourned to provide us with an opportunity to deal with this matter. Because what is happening here is essentially a denial of democracy. Not a single matter of public importance ever since 2019 has been granted to the ANC. The reality is that that letter read out by the Speaker is misleading and false. So I want to ask, and this is my point of order, we want to consult on this matter. We want the House to adjourn for 20 minutes so that we can consult on this matter. But democracy is actually being denied to us. Freedom of speech is being denied to us. And you are totally compromised, Deputy Speaker, in this matter, because it directly affects you, it affects the Premier, it affects the Speaker.
Of order. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The last point raised by the leader of the opposition is casting aspersions on the presiding officer, and I want to allude into Rule 66, 3C and D and 5, and I want to reiterate, if the opposition wanted to have, they had to bring this to programming. Programming sat on Tuesday. They were numb in programming.
Okay. Honourable members, this is the ruling. I unfortunately will not budge. I am not going to adjourn the House in any way. We will proceed. I will leave the honourable members to exercise their democratic right. We will now move on to questions. I recognise the Minister Mania.
Point of order, Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to confirm that I'm audible. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to confirm that I'm audible.
You are audible. You may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for putting the question. My response is yes, the matter has been brought to my attention. My department has informed me of the following. The teacher in question has been suspended and it will, of course, face a disciplinary hearing. He has been instructed not to contact any student, any member of staff, or member of the school governing body, or indeed to enter the school premises at any time. And yes, psychosocial support was, of course, provided to the victim. I also want to say that I am, of course, concerned about this matter. And for that reason, I have instructed my department to undertake a review so that we can be sure that this does not happen again. And of course, this review will have to traverse how similar cases are monitored and how information is shared indeed between the department and the National Prosecuting Authority. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable questions?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for that reply. Just, you know, Minister, this case happened in 2017, and this educator was teaching at this school until 2022. The pupil was still at the school. Now, remember that it's only this year where the court found this educator guilty of sexual assault. Now, my concern is the trauma that that child had to go through. Because the case was just dismissed at 2017. They said there was not sufficient evidence and the case was dismissed. Now we know in a criminal court, you know, in the criminal court, it's much higher and difficult to get somebody guilty, and yet the court found him guilty. So I'm glad what the minister said. One, that they'll have to review the process. And number two, imagine the pupils. They said the pupils were giving conflicting evidence and so on. But, you know, it happened at the sleepover. So there was not enough supervision with that educator in the room. It was a sleepover. And now he's found guilty on 2 sexual assaults. You know, somehow that child is traumatized. I know there's counseling and all of that, but it can never, ever happen to a child again. And that's why I'm so encouraged that the minister says that there's certain steps and they're reviewing the policy. But this is a real injustice to this child. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians. Are there any further hands? Honourable Vimby, is that related to your... over to you, Honourable Said. I'm not sure that it's Honourable Vimby's response.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Yes, mine is related to the question. Let me thank the Honourable Minister for the forthright response and also for committing, because I was interested to see what is the level of psychosocial support being provided, but he has responded. Mine is, if he could possibly, I'm not sure if the Minister has it offhand, but if you could indicate to the House as to what is the number of teachers that are currently facing sexual assault allegations against learners. And I mean, what is the number of teachers facing sexual assault allegations against learners who continue to teach at schools in the province, not those who have been, I mean, for whom there's an allegation, but how many of them are continuing to teach at schools currently, because that's being raised in communities. We have classes and schools that are suspended because learners are protesting because of this very thing, and we've been called to intervene at times before he became the MEC. But I think it must just be, if you could maybe speak to that and also indicate why are these not suspended pending investigations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Let me try to respond in the first instance to the Honourable Christians. I, of course, share his concern. I want to re-emphasize that psychosocial support was provided to the victim, but it's precisely because of the kinds of concerns he raises that I have instructed the department to institute a review. On the question raised by the Honourable Sahed, I am not aware of any other cases, but I do not have the data at hand. And again, I would invite the honourable member to put a written question so that I can provide him with a comprehensive reply.
Thank you very much. Can I just check? I know I recognize Honourable Christians, but just if you can, Honourable Vimby, is that your hand for a question or is it Honourable Karma? Okay, I'm going to proceed with you, Honourable Christians.
Honourable Speaker, my hand was raised long time ago, but you did not recognize me, so I'm therefore going to put it down.
Is that for your question? Is that for the Minister, Honourable Mvimbi?
No, that was not on this issue. That was on a previous issue. So you did not recognize me. Sorry, I did not see that it was still up. So I'm going to put it down.
Thank you very much. I recognize Honourable Christians and then Honourable Kama.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just to say that the educator was found guilty and will be sentenced on the 20th of March. So that will be in the Wynberg court, and people already, standing outside with placards demanding justice. And I'm thankful for the minister for reviewing the policy, and also thankful that I believe it will not happen again. And as Member Said has said, if there's any such cases, it must be severely investigated and also dealt with, so that our children does not live under the same roof or are taught under the same roof as the same perpetrator. Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Christians. Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I thank you for your response, and I obviously look forward to sort of further engagements on the matter, so that we can ensure that this never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Kama, over to you. Final question.
My hand is not on the question, Deputy Speaker. It's a point of order.
Not if it's from the previous points. It can only be on this unless it's relating
but
to.
Why is it that our points of orders are first censored before you hear the point of order?
Because my ruling stands, Honourable.
How do you know what am I going to speak on?
Honourable Kama, no, Honourable Kama. We are in questions. Any further questions on for question one? No, that concludes question one. Thank you, Minister. We now move over to question two. I recognise the Honourable Minister Simmers.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Am I audible to the House and to yourself?
You are audible.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. The relocation of residents is dependent on the availability of housing opportunities, including the construction of dignified dwellings. Pre-COVID, my department had already acquired properties to be developed for integrated human settlements. Various pre-planning processes were underway. The outbreak of COVID-19 and the need to de-densify certain areas necessitated the construction of transitional residential areas, or TRAs, that would serve as a short and long-term solution. In this regard, my department undertook the following steps. in terms of the noon. 2 rezoning applications were submitted to the City of Cape Town for the development of 2 different residential schemes on the properties purchased by the HDA on behalf of my department. There were objections and appeals against both applications. As a law-abiding organ of state, my department was able to successfully defend the objections and appeals, and the rezoning was duly approved. It is worth noting, Deputy Speaker, that the delays in the approval of the rezoning applications set back the development program of the project by more than 12 months. The project will thus be rolled out in 4 stages as follows. 1. The site clearance has already been completed, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Stage 2, the bulk civils installations on the site. Firstly, a detailed design has been recently approved. The contractor has been appointed and on site since May 2022. The bulk services in terms of this specific project will be completed, expected around about the first quarter of 2023. Stage 4, which is the final stage, Deputy Speaker, will be the construction of top structures. Now, internal administrative processes are currently underway with an envisaged commencement date of February 2023. Completion of all phases is expected at the end of June 2024. This project is to yield 1,500 TRA units. Discussions are underway between my department and the City of Cape Town in relation to the relocation plan in this regard as well. In terms of Kosovo, Honourable Deputy Speaker, my department owns property in the Weltevreden Ridge, which is in close proximity to the Kosovo informal settlement. The plan to erect TRAs as part of the overall development of the wedge do exist. A development framework is currently being compiled for the overall development of the wedge, based on which detailed land use applications will be made. And unfortunately, Deputy Speaker, the lack of bulk infrastructure throughout the wedge area, as well as limited budget availability for these bulk services, are delaying the implementation of the wedge project. The department is engaging the City of Cape Town to address these needs, as well as to explore alternative servicing options. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now recognise Honourable Makamba Botia as the first respondent. Honourable Makamba Botia, you having, no, not here. All right, then I move straight over to Honourable Claire Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the then National Minister of Human Settlement made some comment on the 6th of April saying residents in those 2 informal settlements would be relocated 3 months later by July 2020 to the Racing Park Industrial Area. Now, what we want to understand is that was there maybe consultation between the 2 ministries in terms of the timeframes and the proper consultation that has happened with the affected settlements as far as that is concerned, because the response now that is given by the minister is totally different from what the national minister has given to us. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and through you to Honourable Mtlego. First and foremost, the national or the former national minister of human settlements and I visited the site twice. Madam Deputy Speaker, there's a point of order.
No, you may proceed.
Visited the site.
Honourable members, if you're online, please mute yourselves so that the minister can speak. My apologies, Minister.
What point of order?
Thank you.
Honourable Kama, is that a point of order?
Yes.
What is your point of order? Please take your seat, Minister Simmers.
My point of order, Deputy Speaker, is on Rule 52D, as it relates to a question of privilege.
No privilege. Honourable Kama, if it's not related to this question, there's no point. Please
How are you going to
proceed,
know,
Honourable
Deputy Speaker?
Minister. You can't start up this conversation again. I've ruled, and that
What
is clear.
conversation?
No, please, please. I am not going to allow for this. Honourable Minister, can you please respond to Honourable Klego's question?
Deputy Speaker,
Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy Speaker, to respond to Member Klego, I can state that the national or the former national Minister of Human Settlements and I visited the site twice, and at no stage in my presence did the national minister or former national minister make any such commitments. However, what we did commit to, once again in my presence, was where we both stated that we will follow the rule of law and the process in terms as outlined by my response to Member Makama Boyka's question. So we've also been keeping the community abreast at each stage of where we are in terms of the noon site. So as such, unless the member can substantiate what he's alleging, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that is not actually the reality of what transpired when we engage these communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Any further follow-up questions? Honourable Syed, are you talking on that subject?
On this, it's on you, not ruling of Honourable Vin Voorkels.
No, we cannot bring this up, Honourable members. No.
Deputy Speaker, I have a point of order on Rule 52D.
First of all, there is no, Honourable members.
And you have not given me an opportunity after giving me a chance to state the point of order.
Kama, I have not recognized you. I have not recognized you. You don't have absolute right in the House.
But you had recognized me.
Honourable Kama, I have not recognized you.
On a point of order.
Honourable members, there seems to be a concerted effort to create complete chaos in the sitting.
That's not true. That's not true.
We are focused in terms of the rules on honourable members. Honourable members.
This is a democratic institution, Deputy Speaker. I'm rising on a point of order.
And with democracy comes rules, Honourable Kama.
There are rules. There are rules. Allow me. There are rules.
Shout out.
No, there are rules. You are shouting at me. I'm not shouting.
Kama, I'm naming you twice. Honourable Kama.
The Honourable Premier is
Honourable Kama. Honourable Vin Voorkels.
Look what is.
I am talking to Honourable Kama.
Number one is filming.
Honourable Kama, I'm still busy talking to Honourable Kama.
Yes, Deputy Speaker.
You don't want to rule on the
Honourable
Premier.
members, can we have some order in the House?
Protecting the Premier now.
Honourable Vin Voorkels, I have not recognized you. There is a rule in the House. Can you follow this rule book?
You are protecting the Premier. That's what you are doing.
Honourable
Why
Kama.
are you protecting him?
Honourable Vin Voorkels, will you stand up, please?
If he's
Honourable Vin Voorkels,
why
stand
are you
up.
protecting him?
Honourable Vin Voorkels, will you stand up, please?
Another intimidation.
Basic rule in this House, you're not a new member to this Parliament, is if you'd like to address the presiding officer, you rise up on a point of order. That is decorum in the House. Now, when I'm talking to your colleague, Honourable Kama, you can't be shouting about the Premier. We are all treated equally here. You allow me to finish before I deal with the next point. Now, I am still on the point of Honourable Kama. And when I am finished, I will address you. So you will please sit down and allow me to finish my point with Honourable Kama. I trust that is in order. Thank you very much. Honourable Kama, if you shout out one more time, I will also have you removed because you're creating complete chaos in the sitting. Now, Honourable Vin Voorkels, you're raising a point of order. What is your point of order?
Filming in the House, Deputy Speaker. You were.
Honourable Vin Voorkels, just continue stand, please. I'm going to address you. If he was, I did not see him because I'm dealing with your colleague who was shouting over the microphone. So I will have a look, but at the same time, I cannot at this point make that ruling. I did not witness the Premier. I was busy looking at the screen. So we will look at Hansard, we will look at the recording, and we will come back with a ruling. I trust that is okay. No, Honourable members, you are really now
But,
being out of order. Honourable
Deputy
Van Vogel?
Speaker, he just admitted he did. He stopped in front of you.
He said if he did. Okay, but now, based on what ruling, Honourable Van Vogel, would you like me to rule? Honourable members, can we please be adult-like and talk about decorum of the House when we are all responsible for bringing a lack of decorum on the House? Please, honourable members. This seems to be a real concerted effort to make the sitting impossible to run today. So I would, Honourable Sayed, we can't belabor the points. We have to operate in the rules, in the essence of democracy. With democracy comes rules. Let us all obey it within the ambit of democracy. Honourable Sayed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, for giving me the opportunity, because I was not being given when I raised my hand. In order for us to have order in the House, when rulings are made, they need to be explained. The removal of Honourable Lecker needs to be explained.
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
There's no attempt. We don't have any desire for sittings to collapse. We want to hold the executive accountable. But don't protect the executive and its head blindly when the head couldn't, when he couldn't protect you as well, Deputy Speaker, by the way. But I've got another point, Deputy Speaker. I rise on Rule 60. This is a separate matter, Deputy Speaker, completely separate matter. I rise on Rule 60 of the standing rules. Now, last week, the Speaker ruled, Honourable Nkasela, that it was appropriate for him to be presiding over sittings when I raised that issue about him presiding over sittings, given the cloud. Now that the Conduct Committee report we've received in our emails has been ATC'd and is going to be noted here, it would be appropriate, Deputy Speaker, for you, because you are currently presiding over the sitting, for you to rescind that ruling, please, of the Speaker. Can you please rescind that ruling? And I request that the Speaker then not to be allowed to preside in this House until this matter is clear. Thank you.
First, Honourable Mackenzie, then the Chief Whip, then Honourable Bartman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I've actually had a few point of orders on several rulings that has not been met, as there's been breach in terms of the standing rules of this House. The one is Rule 59B, 1B, where the members may not reflect on the dignity. Now, there's been several jibes thrown at you and the last hour and a half, and you've been gracefully, I must give you that respect, accepted it. But I really want you to listen to Hansard and make a ruling on that, because it's just unacceptable. Secondly, I rely on all rules relating to number 66.1. I'm going to read them in the record, Deputy, for the record. When a point of order is raised during a sitting, a member who's speaking must, in terms of what happened earlier on the honourable member, stop speaking and resume their seat if the presiding officer allows so. 66C, a point of order must relate to 1, the procedure, the practice, or the operation of the House. And you gracefully read letters earlier on, which had nothing to do with this House, frankly, but you did it again gracefully. Or a complaint of unparliamentary conduct or behavior on the part of another member, which a member is entitled to raise during the plenary sitting or committee meeting when seeking guidance. Point 66.3b must be pertinent to the current proceedings of the House. Page 66.3d may not be considered if the presiding officer has already ruled on the matter in the same sitting. And then the last point, 66.5, if a member is aggrieved whether a previous sitting may not challenge the ruling in the House, that member must follow the process of writing to the Speaker, who must then convene a rules committee within a reasonable time to address the principle of the ruling. This should be only applied to substantive matters. And that has unfortunately been breached by my colleagues several times, and I've said stern about it, but it cannot continue like this.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. Chief Whip.
Deputy Speaker, I've been covered. I wanted to.
Thank you very much.
66.5.
Thank you very much. Honourable Bartman, have you covered or you want to raise a point?
Chairperson, I rise on Rule 66, but a different point than Member Mackenzie's point of order. In terms of parliamentary procedures and practices in the House, the Conduct Committee is a committee of this House. The Conduct Committee has done its job that after matter has been finalized, it's 80-seat, and any member of this House, in terms of that 80-seat of a Conduct Committee, has a period in which they are allowed to appeal. The appeal period has not concluded. If the appeal period concludes, it will have to go to programming for it to be programmed for a sitting of this House. So it is unparliamentary to bring this now in these particular matters while we're dealing with other matters which you have already ruled on. Thank you.
Exactly. Honorable Sayed, one day it will be you or somebody else and you'll be fighting the same instance. We must give everybody's democratic right before we make judgments and final rulings here. We must respect that. I would like to move on, Honorable Dugmore and then Honorable Bosman.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It's a point of order to obtain clarity from you. I notice, or it appears that the Chief Whip of the ANC, Member Lacke, has been removed. Now, my understanding is that you named her once and then you named her twice, but then I did not recall you naming her for a third time, but she is simply excluded now from the House. So could you please provide clarity as to your approach and your ruling on this matter?
I did, Honourable Dugmore, I did say to her, she spoke again and she shouted again over the microphone and I did ask her to be removed. So that, unfortunately, Honourable Lacke has been removed for not obeying the rules of the House. Honourable Said? Sorry, I had recognised Honourable Osman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I rise on Rule 40 and I ask that you rule on the behaviour of the Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition for constantly contravening Rule 40, constantly interrupting members without rising on a point of order and actually acting like the House is an ANC Youth League meeting. Please do rule on his behaviour.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Honourable Members. I trust now we can continue with the question. Honourable members, I'm not entertaining this anymore. This is really now looking very obvious, like a concerted effort. And I would not like to think that honourable members of this House are running a strategic chess game. Honourable Sayed, you're on a fine line. I shall recognise you on a fine line.
Chair, on the fine, I will not be intimidated, but Chair, I would like to raise, there's a concern here. Many of our members from the ANC are putting up their hands online. They are not being recognized. I can even see from here, there's member in Kondlo, there's member Kama, there's members there. They are not being recognized. That is not fair. If you listen to everybody, let everybody engage. If you rule them out of order, that's fine. But let's listen. That's how we're going to build something constructive. Let's listen to each other. We don't need to shut each other down.
Honourable members, wait, honourable member, please. The point is that the more we entertain the points of order on the points of order, because there's just a lack of discipline of understanding the rule itself, that when there's a ruling which was taken back to a decision made before the questions, we're now back again, and we keep getting told that we're not operating in the best interest of all the members. Honourable members, we know our rules. This is not the beginning of a new term. I'm appealing to you as the Chief Whip of the opposition, or the Whip of the opposition, Honourable Sayed, as the Deputy Leader of the ANC. Please, you ask us to listen to you, but when the DA speaks, you're also shouting. I can't give anybody the space. So I now don't want to recognize any further points of order because it belabors the point. And there's a rule that says points of order on points of order cannot be entertained. So I'm going to state that all these hands that are up are on the same point because everyone's belabored the same point.
But I've not said anything.
I would not be surprised that it's all a point of order on a point of order. Is it related to the question that Honourable Minister Simmers has been posed? Because that's where we are. We're there. We are there. All right.
Honourable
So
Speaker,
I'm
Honourable
going to
Deputy
move on. Chief Whip is the last say, 'cause the Chief Whip is the Chief Whip. Chief Whip, over to you, and we move on.
No.
Chief Whip is
We're
here.
out of order, Ms.
Honourable members, in future, I'm going to ask that you maintain the point of order related to the discussion. So you're going to have to link your point of order. If you can't do that, I can't entertain it. Over to you, Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I'm rising on Rule 66, 4 and 5.
That's right.
And Deputy Speaker,
It's
if
enough.
we can continue
Yes.
with the sitting of this House
Thank
as
you.
scheduled for this afternoon.
Thank you very much. We move over to Honourable Simmers. If you can continue with your response, Honourable Minister Simmers. No. The ruling stands. Honourable Minister Simmers.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I do believe I've responded to Member Trejo. Then the circus went wild on your side. Thank you.
Order, members. Otherwise, I have to name members to leave the House. We will respect Minister Simmers' response. Over to you, Minister Simmers.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the last question posed to me was posed by the Honourable Trejo, and I have responded to that accordingly before these various spurious points of order arose. So I'm not aware of any other follow-up question that was posed to me, Honourable Deputy Speaker, unless you can correct me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions to the Minister with regards to question 2? Honourable Dugmore, over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I would like to know from MEC Simmers whether the process of relocation of residents from Dunoon to Kosovo, whether he has been able to obtain a accessible land audit from the City of Cape Town in order to identify all possible places where these two particular communities can be relocated to. That is the question that I would like to ask, and I'll possibly have a follow-up depending on the response. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister Simmers.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Just a quick one, because the people of Dunoon are not moving to Kosovo, as the leader of the opposition, I think, erroneously posed the start of his question. However, I will respond because I get the essence of what the Honourable Member is asking me. Honourable Deputy Speaker, in terms of Dunoon, as stated in my response to Member Makamba Boyke's question, the portions of land in terms of Dunoon was bought for my department on behalf of HDA to ensure that there's land near where they are currently residing. I explained the process of where we are in terms of Dunoon. In terms of the Kosovo component of the question, which the Honourable Member Dagmo also poses, Honourable Deputy Speaker, once again, this is a matter that's been coming on for a number of years. Land near where the people currently reside have been identified, which is called the wedge, as I alluded to that. And, you know, the relevant processes are now in place. So all on both aspects of the Honourable Member Makamba Boyke's question, which the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is now seeking to seek further clarity on, both solutions were what was seen to be in the best interest of both affected communities. And as such, the land that's been identified is the most suitable, but also the best place to ensure that once the relocation of these affected communities do commence, it's done with limited impact to their livelihoods. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Moran.
Speaker, I'm rising on a point of order. The Minister is responding to questions. You gave the Honourable Dagmo an opportunity to ask the questions while there was hands up. You don't even know whether those members with hands are up wanted to ask a question to the Honourable Minister. But you assume that they want to raise an issue that you have dealt with. I think it should be fair to give those members an opportunity, if they want to ask a question to the Minister, to allow them to ask.
There's no problem with that. Honourable Dagmar, will you wait to see if those questions are coming from Honourable Kama and Honourable Vimby? It doesn't seem so. Honourable Dagmar, would you like to answer ask the final question?
Speaker, just linked to this, but a point of order. I can see visibly that Member Kama has his hand up, and if I'm not mistaken,
Honourable
Member
Vimby.
Vimby.
I just asked them.
Sorry?
I've just asked them. They're not answering. So I have just asked them. Are you asking a follow-up question? This is the second time. Are you asking a follow-up question to Minister Simmers?
Honorable Deputy Speaker, my hand has been up long before some of the members in the House raised their hands.
Are you asking a
you
question
gave them,
to
you
Mr.
gave them,
Simmers?
no, if you may allow me, Deputy Speaker, to express myself without from the chair. I'm saying that I don't know whether you are giving preference to members in the House over members are online. I would like to know whether are we being treated equally here. If we are online.
Honourable Kama, I'm trying to find out if you're asking a follow-up question to the Minister.
No, Deputy Speaker, I'm still rising on the point of order and waiting for you to recognize.
Honourable Vimby, are you asking a follow-up question to Minister Simmers? There we go. Honourable Dugmore, would you like to do your final question to the Minister?
Clarify.
Honourable
Deputy, I was asking about two separate areas, Kosovo and Dunoon. So it wasn't as though one was moving to the other, it was the separate ones. And the realities which I would like to ask is which other properties did the MEC look at? Because he indicated in his response that they actually paid for the land, which means the department paid for private land. He hasn't answered the question in terms of a land audit, because there are different types of public land, national, SOE, provincial, local. So the issue is, why are we spending money buying private land when there is existing land available?
Minister Simmers, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. To the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. In terms of Kosovo, I'm going to repeat my answer that my department owns property in the Weltevreden Wedge, which is in close proximity to the Kosovo informal settlement. So I think that answers that question. In terms of the Dunoon, once again, the portion of land that has been identified and purchased by the HDA on behalf of our department is in close proximity to where the current informal settlement is. So to ensure that there's limited disruption in terms of once the movement of the identified beneficiaries start commencing, Honourable Deputy Speaker. In terms of other land audits, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition needs to understand that in both instances, the planning for both these projects is in our business pipeline. It has committed funding. It's come the full cycle of planning, which means that all variables were looked at prior to confirming and making a decision to what is in the best interest of the surrounding communities, but also how to optimally utilize limited state resources as we seek to improve the quality of the residents who will be moved, the quality of their lives. So I do believe that does respond to the Honourable Member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see I had 3 questions. If there's any last question or last part, Honourable Kame, is that a question to Minister Simmers?
No, it's a point of order based on Rule 52D.
What is your point?
The point of order, Deputy Speaker, is that, and it's on there because 52D speaks on the right to rise on a question of privilege. And I'm rising on that question, Deputy Speaker, because, you know, here online, if we just raise, unlike in the House, we don't have that privilege that is in the House. Members that are in the House, when they raise their hand, you are able to see them and immediately and recognize them, and as it has been happening in the House. But us who are online, we raise the hand and we can only get to attention once we use the mic and say point of order. You know, And that's what member Leke would have done up until you said, I'm going to name you twice. You did that even to me, to say you are going to name me twice, and you had not named me even in a single instance. And you then said member Leke must leave the house. That's an injustice, Deputy Speaker, because as you said that, member Leke replied to say, but you have not named me to say you are going to name me twice. But immediately after that, you then say member Leke must be ejected. And every time I say here, for your attention, Deputy Speaker, I unmute and say, on a point of order, there's someone who just mutes my mic. And that is really a suppression of my right to raise points of order as respected by Rule 66, because Rule 66 says when a point of order is raised, the member who's speaking must be quiet. And 66(2), it says the Speaker of the House must immediately give a ruling. But what you do, Deputy Speaker, to members of the ANC is that when they raise point of order, immediately after that, you give about 3 members of the DA to entertain and not immediately rule as the rules that are requiring to do. So the question is, how are we supposed to proceed in this fashion if you, as our Deputy Speaker, because you are the Deputy Speaker of the House, you do not protect all of us in this House, but only the members of the Democratic Alliance?
Thank you, Honourable Kama. I think what was really very refreshing was that you could speak without people shouting over the microphone. So, you know, listening is a skill, and being able to hear somebody as clearly as you without people interjecting over you, I was quite clearly able to hear you. And if people conduct themselves like that in the House and online, we're able to be able to hear everybody. But we can't expect anybody to make sense of somebody shouting. So, Honourable Kama, I really want to thank you for the way you've conducted that. I fully understand, but I have made a ruling on that. And I, unfortunately, it is, you know, the question really is not to be answered. It's a question which doesn't require an answer. I've taken and made my ruling, the Chief Whip. But I thank you for the way you've posed your issue. Thank you very much. Honourable members, it seems like there's no further questions relating to Minister Simmers's question. That concludes questions. Outstanding replies will be printed on the Hansard, which we don't have at this moment. We're moving over to the questions to the Premier without notice. Honourable Dugmore, what's your point?
Deputy Speaker, I would like to address you on behalf of the ANC. And it's an order point because it affects this particular session. We started off the session with the 5th successive refusal since 2019 of any debate on a matter of public importance. That was how we started. Secondly, we asked for you, as the Deputy Speaker, who is implicated in terms of the Code of Conduct reports, to vacate the seat and to have an independent and a neutral chair. That was refused. You have not acknowledged our members who are online, and you've only recognized certain members in this House, which for us is a proof of the bias that you have displayed, the closing down of the democratic space. And we are convinced that this is because you are compromised because of the fact that the Premier has gone against the Speaker. The Premier is protecting you. You're not allowing us to actually express our views, to debate these matters. And therefore, because you, in the way that you've chaired this meeting, Honourable Deputy Speaker, have closed down the space for all of us, that we want to give notice that we will, in an orderly fashion, leave this House because of the fact that this Democratic Alliance,
Order members, can I allow... Honourable Van Voorgel, I don't remember you sitting here in the chair.
That this Democratic Alliance...
Honourable members, Honourable Dugmore, if you want to be heard, control your members.
You are the Speaker.
I'm busy listening to Honourable Dugmore. I've told they're not shouting. Honourable
Deputy Speaker.
I cannot listen to Honourable Dugmore, who is the leader of your province, if you don't allow him to speak to me. I am not looking at the DA. I'm listening to Honorable Doug Moore.
Honorable, no, but the Honorable Deputy Speaker,
Honorable
Honorable Mackenzie just shouted.
Honorable Vimby, are you going to allow your honorable leader to speak, or are you going to interject him?
After I've addressed this issue, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Mackenzie stood up and shouted, but we did not say anything to her, to him. But when Honorable Rachel stood up, you were very quick to shut it down. So this is a very biased way.
You're not here. Nobody's shouting. Only, please. Now, can everybody sit down for a second? Can I just allow the Honorable Doug Moore to finish, and then I will recognize the DA. And that includes you guys, the ANC. Please, honorable members. This is not a one-sided debate. Honorable Doug Moore, are you complete? Have you completed your?
Yeah. No, so just to conclude, Deputy Speaker, we will be leaving this House, and we want to put on record that the Democratic Alliance and other parties have been granted repeatedly opportunities for matters of public importance at the National Assembly. We have been refused since 2019. We haven't been able to have one. We think this is because of the fact that the Speaker and yourself, Honourable Deputy Speaker, are embroiled in internal factional and racist politics, which have got personalities involved, and that this is affecting not only the decorum, but our right to freedom of speech. Thank you.
So, Honourable Doug Moore, please just remember you wrote this letter to the Speaker. You did not write a letter to me. So, but if you have the full rights to exercise your democratic right to leave the House if you so choose, we honour that as if that's the choice of the ANC. Honourable Bartman.
Chairperson, I'm raising on 2 points of orders. The first point of order I'm raising is on Rule 62, reflection of holders of an office. You're not allowed to reflect on the honor and the competence of a holder of office, whose removal of such office is dependent on a decision of this House, and that includes yourself. And further, the second point of order I'm raising on, and it's a pity that members of the ANC is leaving, but the member Doug Moore used the words, the Code of Conduct Report. There's only one report that was ATC to my knowledge, and that was by the Speaker regarding WCPP matters. So my question is, if there's a Code of Conduct Committee report that the Doug Moore is aware of, and if such report has not been ATC by the Code of Conduct, then I'm very concerned about whether the members of the ANC are speaking to one another about what is happening in the Conduct Committee. So I would like it to be looked at the Hansard as to the exact wording, because the words I heard was the words Code of Conduct Report. Those were the words I heard. So I would like this House to look at what the Hansard said and to investigate this matter, because members of the Conduct Committee are not allowed to speak out of the Conduct Committee until a report on a matter is tabled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bartman. I certainly will look at the investigation and the wording that has been put out there. It is very concerning, honourable members, that we have gone down to such a state of decorum. It really is a concern. Honourable Murray, have you raised you're raising on a point of order?
Yes, I was going to appeal to the opposition not to do what they've done and to bring calm to this House. And I would do so, I would have done so in my position as having been given the position of Father of the House. But of course, he didn't recognize me, I had. So it's too late now. But I think we must bear in mind, what image do we hope to project beyond the walls of this chamber? I'm sorry. I came back to politics, not for this. I'm sorry.
Honourable Murray, you may.
What has happened today is unacceptable. But I think now we need some strong leadership in this House. Premier, I want to address you through the chair. Do what you know is in the best interest of this House. Not in the best interest only of one section of the House. Because if this is going to become repetitive, I don't know whether I still want to be a member of this House. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray, for your words. They certainly were very meaningful. I would like to proceed, Honourable members, with some decorum. Please, if we can move over to questions to the Premier without notice. I recognise the Honourable Kleho. Honourable Kleho, are you able to pose your question?
Yes, thanks, Deputy Speaker. My question will relate to the recently released crime statistics for the period covering January to March 2022, specifically relating to the Western Cape. Now, when one looks at the carjacking statistics by police station nationwide, Western Cape features with 4 police stations, and the majority of these police stations feature in the top 5, where the Western Cape is represented by 3. These stations are Harare Police Station with 87, Philippi East Police Station with 64, and Nyanga Police Station with 60. Now, what we would like to understand is that how will the safety plan assist the Western Cape not to dominate the top 5 of the carjacking crime in the country? Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Kleho. Over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much to the Honourable Kleho for that question. And of course, as you know, the safety plan is about reducing crime. At the apex is about murder, which is sort of like that apex crime that we are focusing on, and of course the causalities. And you know, sometimes I do worry because we get asked to say, well, let's deviate to other areas like carjacking, or even to redeploy across from the focus of the policing component of the safety plan. Of course, the violence prevention component is another part of the safety plan. But I think what the honourable member is asking me is, you know, how are we going to affect change there? And you know, I must answer directly that there is not a program that's running in there that says we are going to focus on reducing carjacking in this province, because that's not what we're doing. We are focusing on reducing murders. You know, obviously, I really hope we get to that stage where we can say as the province, we've now sorted murders out and we're going to be focusing on other issues. The safety plan will obviously also have an effect on all crime, because that's exactly what it does. When the LEAP officers are deployed to an area, we do notice, and we measure the murders, but we also measure the attempted murders. We measure the burglaries. We measure the anything that happens around that specific area to do with crime, of which carjackings will form part of it. But I must be honest with him to say that is not a key focus of the plan. It is to reduce murders. And if I have a look at the latest statistics on murders, 22% in South Africa, an increase, which is horrendous. I mean, it really is beyond belief. And of course, we're quite happy now that we still see a decrease in the LEAP areas where the focus is. So 22%, actually over a 22% increase nationally, but provincially we're seeing a 2.9% decrease. So that is in itself, I think, if you juxtapose those two numbers with each other, a great achievement. But then you start to look at the other layers, a 27.2% increase in attempted murder. So you can see, even though we're focusing on that apex crime, we are seeing other levels of crime that are reducing. And of course, that also then it goes across the board. So even those hotspots areas, which I also am looking at these latest statistics to say that, that we measure like the top 30 hotspots or murder hotspots in the country, and where the LEAP officers are deployed, 12 of them are in 12 of those areas, and that's where we're seeing this flattening or the plateauing. But the really interesting thing is that 4 areas are no longer in the 30 that we focus on. So where that deployment happens, and they're Gugulethu, Philippi East, Mitchell's Plain, and Elsie's River. And so, of course, if they're not in the top murder hotspots, we won't now take those officers away just yet. we will keep focusing, because it's also then bringing the violence prevention and the other layers in, which definitely will have a reduction on carjacking, I've got no doubt. And of course, carjacking has also got other areas that help us. For example, when we are doing roadworks, which we saw in Philippi, as soon as the roadworks were happening, we saw an increase in carjackings and car hijackings because of the slowness of the vehicles, of stop-start of the vehicles, and people were vulnerable in their motor vehicles. I visited the Philippi village the other day, and the NPO that operates the Philippi village, one person out of the whole management team has not been hijacked. One person out of the whole management team has not been hijacked. So it is a real critical issue. So I thank the honourable member for raising this question. I mean, I know that it's a big problem. And of course, I think it would also be great when he interacts with the safety plan as an honourable member in this House, as someone who is playing a role in the standing committee, that we actually ask those questions so that we actually have a look. Is it something that we should actually be putting a line under to say, are we going to change focus on this specific issue? I'll say now, again, we focus on the murders, but perhaps it is a good question that we say, and let's actually have a look at the data. Let's have a look at the evidence, and that will also say maybe that is also another lever within the safety plan that we should be working on. But I thank the honourable member for that question.
Thank you very much, Premier. I now recognise Honourable Mackenzie. Sorry, my apologies, Honourable Clerk. Sorry, Honourable Clerk, over to you. I got mixed. Sorry, my.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Speaker. Thanks to the Premier also for the response. Indeed, we note that there were around 166 gang-related matters in the province for the period of January to March 2022, and compared with the 131 for the same period in 2020-2021. So, and then what we want to understand is that especially when it's gangs, we understand the mass murders that are taking place, the protection fee or the extortion fee that is being taking place. Now, on the issue of gangs, that how is the safety plan would be able to drastically reduce the murder rate as far as that is concerned, because we note the increase. So is there anything maybe that in terms of the murder rate that the safety plan can advise us? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Again, a nice question or follow-up, and thanks to the honourable member. Of course, we have been a long proponent of getting the anti-gang unit back in again, and we definitely welcomed the announcement of the anti-gang unit back in the region. And we really do try to overlay or overlap where our safety plan activities take place, and working with not only SAPs themselves through our provincial commissioner, but also working with the anti-gang unit in those specific focus areas, and of course across the board in other areas too, because remember the policing component of the safety plan has got dedicated areas that it focuses on. But there's another side to the safety plan, and that's the violence prevention. And I think that even goes more to how do we really deal with the gang violence, and how gang violence has grown exponentially. My last visit when I was in Lavender Hill, and I was actually driving around Lavender Hill with the police themselves, and it blew my mind to the last time I was there, and then this time 2 weeks ago, how many more gangs there were in the police report, and how many more gangs there were as we were driving around, and you were hearing, well, this is the boundary where this gang ends, and this is the boundary where this gang begins, and this gang don't have shooters, but they rent shooters from that gang. It is unbelievable, the growth in gangsterism, extortion across the board. And of course, again, these gangs are the ones that are shooting our children. These gangs are the ones that are a key component in playing a part in those murders. But the violence prevention component, which is a much longer term component, is how do you identify those young boys at risk? Because those young boys are the boys that are going into the gangs. And we've got these programs through all of our departments on how they identify those boards. How do we ramp up a chrysalis project so a young boy who is identified at risk of getting into gangs and drugs, that we actually enable that person, give them the wherewithal to remain in our schooling system, because you want them as the risk taker for the future. That's the violence prevention program. That's the data and analysis that actually helps us make interventions. I mean, it really stands out for me in this youth month. This is, and I mean, I have a look at so many of our gangsters and how they fall exactly in with the youth category. They are our youth, and they are running amok in our streets and scaring our families. I referred the other day to that voice clip and the teachers, worried about these kids running into their classrooms because they're just trying to escape the shooting. That is where the violence prevention programs, the measurement in the 34 hospitals, how we get to say, this is where stabbings are happening, this is where shootings are happening. How do we focus on that street, that suburb, so that we actually try to get ahead of it? These are complex questions. These are complex matters to deal with. And of course, as a province, we don't have the levers. We have very few levers. Our actual constitutional mandate is oversight. And so, yeah, it becomes difficult. It really does. But, I always, maybe I must refer to a point that was raised by the Honourable Marais a short while ago. It's about this house and our democracy, and how this house and our democracy should be working for the betterment of the citizens in this province. And that's why these kind of questions are really important. And again, to the Honourable Klechu, let's play our role as elected members here to interrogate that safety plan, to come with new ideas, because no one has a monopoly on how to fix this, not anywhere in the world. And we need to be innovative. We need to make sure that we bring change for these citizens. We owe it to our citizens to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Klecho. Dan, thank you. Over to you, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chairperson. Thank you for Honourable Klecho. I'm going to keep the question along that line, Premier, because I know safety is one of your top priorities. What impact has the provincial safety plan had on crime in the Western Cape? And further to that, does the Premier believe that provincial government should have a greater influence on policing efforts?
First, I'll start off by saying absolutely, I still believe it, that we should have devolution of powers. And I think just with the small interventions that we've put in place over the last 3 years, we have shown that those interventions, using data, using evidence, using that to make decisions on how deployments happen, we can see the difference. And that, I think, if there was ever anything that could show our national government that devolution would make a difference and bring down crime, there it is, let alone all of the other stuff around violence prevention. I'm very happy that our safety dashboard now on violence prevention has been recognized by FOSAD, the Director Generals in South Africa, and they all want to come now and have a look at it. So we'll have DGs from other provinces and other departments coming to have a look at this specific management tool. But again, it is about bringing about change. The safety plan is a learning plan. It's an evolving plan. It's something that changes over time. And we need to use this Parliament to measure it. We need to ask these kind of questions. We need to make sure that we keep on innovating, as I said in the last question, because I mean, those initial successes, which I've just spoken about, we've got to make sure that they're sustained. We can't be slowing it down over here and then another area becomes a hotspot. We've really got to be watching this thing very, very closely. And again, making sure that we continue to play our actual role, which is police oversight, to show the number of police officers to population. Our population is growing out of all proportion. The expected 1.4 million more people coming to this province in the next 8 years by 2030. That is putting huge pressure on resources, etc. And of course, that needs more policing. It needs more resources. It needs more management. And I haven't even got to talking about the criminal justice system and how that plays a role as well, also managed by national government. But let's just focus on the police to start with and the violence prevention and do whatever we can to make sure that we build a safer, better province for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mackenzie.
Deputy Chairperson, Premier, we'll see this weekend is a big rugby camp taking place. And, the Stormers, not all of us want to go, but the restrictions are having an impact on it. Do you think it's about time to lift the restrictions, all the restrictions, and what impact will it have on job creation and the Western Cape economy?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The honourable member is being a bit naughty because he's changing his question from safety to restrictions. But I'll say, in the interest of safety for the citizens of this province, we actually have to move from where we are in COVID-19, and we have to remove these restrictions. You know, I just think about our stadium being half full or being full. The difference is thousands of people not making money, whether they be taxi drivers or people supplying pies or waitrons or people at our airport, hotels. Just that one action, by having a full stadium or a half full stadium. And quite frankly, the data and the science shows us we can be fully open again. The real data that you've got to put in place is hospitals and deaths. Our death rate in this fifth wave has not gone above the excess predicted deaths of a normal year, excluding COVID-19. It hasn't gone above that top prediction and entered into anything in excess deaths above normal predictions. Our hospitals have shown we actually never went higher than 3% of our hospitals' beds being taken up by either COVID-19 or presumed COVID-19 patients. Both of those managed and coped through this fifth wave. In actual fact, they coped exactly the same way in the fourth wave. So quite frankly, we do need to open up. We need to get our schools back. We need to get our schools back that they don't have to wear masks in schools anymore, because you can see it is not necessary. And Speaker, maybe I should also thank the honourable member for that question, because it's given me an opportunity to say that I went to 2 schools this morning, 2 schools in our province, the only 2 in South Africa that are recognised on the shortlisting of the Best Schools in the World award. Out of 3 million schools, 2 schools. And those 2 schools, West End in Mitchells Plain and Pinelands North Primary School, those 2 primary schools are recognised out of 3 million schools in South Africa, the only 2 in the competition. You could see around the world other schools being recognised. The end results will be in October of this year. But the question's about safety and about removing restrictions and getting our economy going again and giving people opportunities. I'll tell you what really stood out for me in both of those schools, is how they are the center of community. How that center of community, do you know that at West End Primary School in Mitchells Plain, that they have in 10 years not had 1 case of vandalism, not 1 robbery, not 1 break-in, in 10 years in that school. How amazing is that? I mean, if ever there was a school that deserves this accolade. And unbelievable feeling when you get to Pinelands North about how they build community. And building community means creating opportunity, getting our young people of this province, giving them the basis of getting a job into the future. Nothing stops a bullet like a job. Nothing puts food on the table like a job. Nothing gives you dignity like a job. And these schools are playing their part in the ecosystem of safety. And we need to make sure as government we remove the restrictions. We need to make sure as government we create the environment for safety. We put plans in place. We innovate. We really make sure that we are doing our job on building a safer and more prosperous province. And I notice you haven't stopped me for time yet, Deputy Speaker, so I have to just say one more thing to the father of this House, to what he has just said. And I want to say to him, thank you for those words, because I too sat here today and saw absolutely an orchestrated disruption of this House. And that was unacceptable. We are honourable members elected by the people of this province to make the biggest difference we can for the citizens of this province. And when we create havoc the way that this was created today, it was unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. We need to understand that people look to this House for their futures, look to this House for education, for health, for security and safety, for opportunity, for a future. And it's this House that has to oversee the plans of the executive. It's this Parliament that I've been so proud of so many years myself. And quite frankly, what was orchestrated today was unacceptable. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. The time is up, and brings us to the end of questions to the Premier. We will now proceed in terms of Rule 145 to statements by members. I recognize, just to remind members, it's 2 minutes each. I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, last Friday, the fourth quarter crime statistics for the 2021-2022 financial year were released. They painted a worrying picture. Between January and March of this year, there was an 11.7% increase in contact crimes, 16.2% increase in sexual offences, and an 11.4% increase in contact-related crimes in comparison to the same period the previous year. Whilst there are many factors that lead to crime becoming more prevalent, one of them is that our crime-fighting mechanisms are worsening. Whilst the Western Cape's law enforcement advancement program has helped to stabilize crime in hotspots, the main issue remains our police service is undercapacitated, crime intelligence is stretched too thin or non-existent, and our correctional services are handicapped. As such, rampant crime endemic to South Africa and is sanctioned by our national government's inability to align our priorities in keeping our residents safe. Many residents feel disillusioned in the state apparatus and they trust that justice will not prevail. Unfortunately, this feeling has led to people turning to vigilantism, and this often leads to innocent people losing their lives and suffering the worst fates. Just last week, residents witnessed an innocent e-hailing driver being burnt alive after being mistaken for a suspect who abducted another individual. This incident is one example of how frustrated people can cause more harm than actual good. Honourable Speaker, as the DA, we implore everyone in this province not to take the law into their own hands, no matter how frustrated they may be. Let us rather work together through the proper channels to ensure that we can keep our communities safe. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise the EFF. Are they in the House table, staff?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed, sir.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The EFF condemns in the strongest terms the racist elements which continue to show their ugly head in the application process to former Model C schools in the Western Cape, more particularly against learners of color. A number of black parents have recently raised concern regarding their children being rejected in all former Model C schools. Their concerns are also shared by the South African Youth Council, which also has received similar complaints from the parents across the province. What is disturbing about all this is the Western Cape Department of Education coming out to defend these schools blindly through its spokesperson without even investigating the matter or applying their audiolateral pattern. Had it done so, it would not have gone publicly saying things like the online application process has eliminated discriminatory practices, as it is no longer asked about the parents' financial income or status. The fact of the matter is that the application process itself takes into account racial classifications, and there is also an option for selecting a exemption, which most parents complain that coupled with the racial classification, it might be the reason why their applications are rejected. If a parent of color, for example, chose to a fee exemption option during the application, it would then mean the nonsensical for the department's spokesperson to come and tell us that this does not speak to the issue of parents' financial income or status. These are some of the issues the department should have investigated before going public to speak on behalf of parents without prior consultation. This level of racism needs to come to a stop, and we hope that the Department of Education in the province will definitely zoom in and arrest the matter. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Now recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the NHI bill is currently being reviewed and debated in the National Portfolio Committee of Health. This is where the DA will continue to expose its many shortcomings and failures as it will bring about if implemented. Honourable Deputy Speaker, as the Democratic Alliance, we will never claim that we do not realise that there are gross inequalities in our health sector. The reality is that as South Africans, we are faced with public healthcare institutions that have suffered from a culture of corruption and incompetence, which in turn has led to poor management, underfunding, understaffing, a loss of skilled staff, and deteriorating infrastructure. We all agree that the low quality provision of health services is a major issue in South Africa, but the use of the NHI will not resolve this, especially if it's something that takes away freedom of choice, infringes on the rights of asylum seekers, lacks accountability and proper management structures, and threatens provincial authority. Honourable Deputy Speaker, instead of spending money we don't have, the ANC national government should start by focusing on fixing governance and preventing over 20 billion rand being lost to corruption in the health sector every year. It seems like the ANC national government is certain on delivering a death wish for South Africans. As the representatives of people, we need to be honest and realistic in our approach at all times. Honourable Deputy Speaker, South Africans should indeed be very scared of the ANC's intentions. Through you, Deputy Speaker, we suggest that the leader of the opposition, which is not here anymore, Deputy Speaker, lobby his national colleagues to see how the Western Cape delivers quality health services before they push our public health care off the cliff. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Perfectly timed. Thank you, Honourable Member. And I recognise the ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It is the wish of every parent to have their children enroll at a prestigious school. It is also the wish of parents to provide their children with better opportunities that they had. So education, we know, is the agent of change, and it can lift learners out of their bondage of subsistence living. Deputy Speaker, I'm bringing this to the House because Mrs. Yumna Peterson applied at 3 schools in the southern suburbs for admission for her daughter, Hadisha Peterson. Hadisha turns 5 on her birthday in September. It has been a dream of the parents to send a child to Weinberg Girls Junior School. And this is one of the 3 schools she applied for, but it was all denied. Mrs. Peterson claims that the application for admission was unsuccessful because she's not in the feeder area. The Peterson family reside in Manenberg and wish for their daughter to be exposed to a different school and a different social environment. I've sent a letter to the Minister regarding this matter on Friday, the 3rd of June, and awaiting a response. The question is, the Western Cape Education Department's vision is to provide quality education to every child, to every learner, at every classroom, in every school. The question is, does this also apply to our learners wanting a better future in a prestigious school? Does that also apply to them? I thank you.
Honourable Member, recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The ongoing damage to key railway infrastructure is one of the worst acts of economic sabotage. While PRASA is already having difficult times guaranteeing that our trains are in good functioning order, the South African Police Services, the National Prosecuting Authority, State Security should step up and take a stand in tackling the criminal conduct that is hindering the efficient running of trains in the Western Cape. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this week 2 contract PRASA employees were shot in broad daylight. These defenseless workers were shot in the arm and both legs respectively. They were on duty fixing copper cables that were stolen near Bontivers by criminals who continue to wander freely amongst our communities. There be no arrest. the DA wishes the affected workers a speedy recovery. This brazen criminality cannot be tolerated anymore. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I urge PRASA to urgently collaborate with SAPS, the National Prosecuting Authority, State Security, and the Provincial Department of Community Safety to establish an effective railway safety strategy. As long as PRASA, SAPS, State Security, and the National Prosecuting Authority do not address the issue on safety and security on our railways and have plans to, and the new plans to reopen the Central Line will not fully be realized anytime soon. If proper and efficient measures are not followed, the consequences of commuters will be catastrophic. The rising fuel prices of petrol is already encouraging more commuters to choose public transportation. If trains are not an option, where will they go? So I call on PRASA, SAPS, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the State Security to work together with the Western Cape government to ensure that the public can rely on safe and efficient trains. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise the Honourable Freedom Fund Plus.
Speaker, South Africa's reached an epoch in history where we've become the killing fields of Africa, a time of unstoppable murders and rapes, a time of intense, never-ending fears amongst its citizens, a time of hunger, a time of no hope, a time of utter disillusionment. Therefore, today I wish to quote the great leader, Nelson Mandela, to remind members of our responsibilities in this House. This is an extract from his speech when receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. And I quote, "Children must at last play in the open field, no longer tortured by the pangs of hunger or ravaged by disease or threatened with the scourge of ignorance, molestation and abuse, and no longer required to engage in deeds whose gravity exceeds the demands of their tender years. The rewards of which we have spoken will and must also be measured by the happiness and welfare of the mothers and fathers of these children. We must walk the earth without fear of being robbed, killed for political or material profit, or spat upon because they are beggars. What has happened to us South Africans? What has happened? We've killed the dreams of giants like Martin Luther King Jr. We've killed Nelson Mandela's dream and that of Gandhi, and we did it in a mere 28 years. Cry, South Africa. Weep. We've killed and destroyed South Africa in the name of liberty and equality. We should hang our heads in shame. We've killed Madiba's dream of a no domination by any majority or minority. Crime has become South Africa's greatest pandemic, more scary than even COVID-19.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. And I recognise Al-Jamar. Are they in the House table stop? No. Then I finally recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
My sincere apologies. My sincere apologies. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It is with much concern that we read about learners not yet placed at schools. This is a very worrying and disturbing phenomenon which has become a norm in the Western Cape province. Just 2 weeks ago, the Western Cape Education Department told the Cape High Court that 7 unplaced learners would be starting school. According to media reports, only 2 of the 7 unplaced learners are now attending school. Even more disturbing is that one of the learners were told that he or she was too old to start the grade and referred to an FET college. Why must learners wait so long for a placement and then be told they are too old? This is only what we know of. I personally know of someone in Mitchell's Plain also waiting for placement at the school. This is unconstitutional, undemocratic, and discriminatory against Black learners who want to complete their school career. Al-Jamaa repeats its call on the department to enroll unplaced learners at formal Model C schools and pay for it instead of wasting money on court cases against good and progressive principles such as Mr. Wesley Newman. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member, over to you, Honourable Plato.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Speaker, as child protection week concludes, it is important to reflect on the question of whether or not we are doing enough to protect and nurture our children. We know that this country is a hard place to raise a child and an even harder place in which to grow up. Gang involvement, drug abuse, and teenage pregnancy are only some of the many social ills which affect the youngest in our communities. In the Western Cape, we have mobilized the whole of society approach to the issue, including community-based solutions such as Eye on the Child initiative, as well as funding initiatives such as the child care and youth centers, which provide specialized care for disabled and homeless young people. But we must also look at the many other factors that must be focused on, which place our children at risk. Poverty alleviation and child protection goes hand in hand. And that is why this province has placed so much of its energy behind the creation of jobs. But national government is not playing its part in alleviating the poverty which causes so many social ills. The already meager 350 rand social grant has suffered countless setbacks in its implementation, and we now have reports that technical issues have hampered the collection of grants at pay points in grocery stores. And as usual, they struggle to get the technical issues out of the way. This is especially true in the Western Cape, which has the worst ratio of clients to SASSA offices in the country. We have 16 offices to deal with 1.6 million clients, meaning a ratio of over 100,000 clients to each office. Today, I call on SASSA and national government to meet us halfway in helping to alleviate the poverty facing our communities and children, and to ensure that all beneficiaries receive their grants on time, every time. The poorest of the poor continue to suffer again and again as a result of national government's failure to ensure sound processes are in place to render the necessary services. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That brings us to the end of statements. In terms of Rule 145.6, are there any members of the Executive that would like to respond to member statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively? I don't see any members. No, thank you very much. There I see a hand. Honourable Minister Maney, you may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I confirm that I'm audible?
You are clearly audible.
Thank you. Several members raised the issue of learner placements, and let me say that I understand the frustrations of parents and learners in regard to placements. I would say to honourable members that have raised questions in the House that if they have knowledge of specific cases, and some members did mention specific cases, that they furnish me with the details, or alternatively, notify parents that at the appropriate time, admissions or placements can be appealed, and of course those appeals are lodged with myself. To the honourable Christians, who I take note, of course, that you have furnished me with some details in a letter, and of course I will respond on the matters that you raise in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for that. That brings us to the end of members' statements and Minister's response. We now move over to notices of motion in terms of Rule 151. Please note that we were required to deliver all notices of motions to the Secretary for placing on the order paper, and these notices have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We will now move to motions without notice. Just a reminder to our members that in terms of Standing Rule 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolence and congratulatory were submitted to the Programme Authority prior to this plenary on the 7th of June 2022. Members also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory condolence will not be allowed in the sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I would also, just for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved of. The following member motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows. Honourable Maseko, Honourable Maseko, Honourable America, Honourable van der Westhuizen, Honourable Brinkhuis, Honourable Lekker, Honourable Sayed, Honourable Nkondlo, Honourable Dugmore, and Honourable Windvogel. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of the proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name as if the member has read them out aloud. We will now afford the members an opportunity to move motions without notice as per the standing rule of 152D. This could include motions without notice that were not approved of in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that the 30 minutes as per the standing rule will start now. I recognize the Honourable Member Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes the ongoing mass shootings in Kailicha, and I note further that these mass shootings are linked to extortions from foreign nationals who have businesses in the townships. Further notes the illicit drug trading is also another motive for the mass murders in Kailicha. Recognizes the concerns raised by residents that police are not willing to enter these high-risk areas as they fear for their safety. Further, I recognize that the Western Cape Organised Crime Unit is not equipped and lack the efficiency to stop illicit drug trading and to protect businesses, people, including legal foreign traders, from becoming victims of extortion. I so move. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House knows the crime involving mass shootings in the Western Cape townships and has become nothing short of a norm and everyday culture. This follows the shooting and killing of 4 men in Kailicha Site B on Tuesday, 7th June 2022 at Madiba Supermarket. This latest shooting comes 4 days after the release of the National Crime Statistics, which saw Western Cape record increases on murder rate and gang-related crimes. This is very unfortunate because since January this year, it has been clear that mass shootings are a concern in townships as criminals rule with impunity without any police or law enforcement personnel on site. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Over to you, Honourable Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House condemns the continued threats by the Drakenstein municipality to the Minister of Cocta over the intended legal action regarding a municipal manager who should have retired long time ago, but stayed on with the intention to cash in bigger pension money. This follows the actions of the municipality in allowing a 65-year-old municipal manager, Johan Liebenbrand, to stay on as a manager beyond the 6 months extension period. He was granted by the Minister of Cocta. Now that the Cocta refuses to pay his retirement for the unaccountable years, the municipality is threatening with the action in order to make sure that their friends cash in with a hefty payout. it would be unfortunate if this matter is to go to court, because this would be taxpayers' money that will be used. Money which should have been spent on service delivery for the poor and the old. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There are objections, Honourable Clerho. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Clerho, I think that's your third one. Over to you.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House welcomes the reopening of the Kuna Art Institute this coming Sunday on 12 June 2022 in Observatory. The Institute is a women-led non-profit company which dedicates its work to the preservation of the Khoi and San heritage. This year's opening will begin with an exhibition showcasing and celebrating the Khoi and San heritage through art. As Africans, we should pride ourselves with the work of the Institute, as it reminds us of who we are and where we come from, and not for. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Thank you, Honourable Clerk. We move over to Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House is alarmed at the news of the fire that gutted a classroom of Blessings Educare Centre in Delft. The fire occurred just after 3 a.m. on the morning of Tuesday, 7 June 2022. Daily, as reported in Daily Voice Junior, Burger, Bester, 8 June 2022. The ECD Centre that caters for 25 grade R learners in the classroom lost everything in a blaze. Mandla Kaye, who has been working at the CRIS since 2015, was the first on the scene. Commends the community who responded and vainly tried to extinguish the blaze, and extends his gratitude to the City Fire and Rescue Service for extinguishing the fire. According to Jermaine Carlos, the spokesman for the City Fire and Rescue Service, the fire was extinguished by 6:07 a.m. The building was substantially damaged. No injuries were reported, and no lives were lost in the blaze. And notes in total, the CRES has about 60 learners and is appealing for assistance from the sponsors to rebuild the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House welcomes the recently launched Cape Nature Conservation Club for Kids, called the Cape Nature Cubs Club, whose goal is to teach children more about environmental issues and how they can make positive contributions to keeping our planet safe. I further move that the House applauds the staff and pupils of the Conservation Club of Woodlands Primary in Heideveld on being the first school to join this initiative, and further commend Cape Nature under the leadership of its Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Azima Umar, on the phenomenal work they do in bringing children closer to nature. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Botha.
I move without notice that the House notes that the House notes the two recent reports on the Western Cape municipalities from the Auditor General and Ratings Africa, respectively. 22 municipalities in the Western Cape received unqualified audits from the Auditor General, and a further 5 received qualified audits with findings. Additionally, Ratings Africa's most recent Municipal Financial Sustainability Index found that the Western Cape municipalities are generally financially stable, with the province being home to some of the highest ranked municipalities in South Africa. These findings highlight that municipalities in the Western Cape are leading the way and setting an example for clean, efficient and effective local governance in South Africa. I so move.
Thank you very much, Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Members, That concludes the business for the day. Mr. Stamela will now end the meeting, and all the meeting members will be exited from the meeting. Thank you very much. From the sitting, the House is now adjourned.